If you're just beginning in digital art, you've probably heard of these two programs, Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator, but you might not know the difference between the two and when you should use either one. So let's talk about that. Let's start with Adobe Photoshop. Photoshop is what's called a raster-based program, or basically it works in pixels. Pixels are individual blocks of color. Imagine if you have a red block next to a slightly orangey red block next to an orange block. These three blocks together make absolutely, well, nothing. But when you add hundreds or thousands of other blocks next to them, you create a picture. And that's exactly how Photoshop works. But what about Illustrator? Illustrator is not a raster-based program. It does not work in pixels. Rather, it works in something called vector. Vector is, well, it's difficult to explain. Basically, it works in math. I know, everybody's favorite subject. Instead of thinking of blocks of color, think about connect the dots. Remember those connect the dots worksheets we used to do as kids where you would take the number 1 dot and connect it to the number 2 dot with a line? It's exactly like that, except you choose where the dots go. So now comes the question, when should you use one over the other one? And here's when. Photoshop is great for, well, photos. I'm sure you could guess that. But the reason why is because you have so many individual blocks of colors, remember, those are called pixels, that you can make super intricate, detailed images. This is why Photoshop is also great for digital painting, because you can add in complicated textures. So if you're looking to make digital painting or just edit your photos, use Photoshop. It's a great tool for that. Now, one of Photoshop's biggest downfalls is that you only have so many pixels that you're working with. So imagine taking a picture that's 1,000 pixels and then try to make it 2,000 pixels. Well, Photoshop is going to have to do its best to make up 1,000 pixels. Illustrator doesn't have that problem. Because remember, it works in vector. It works with dots and lines. So no matter how big I scale an illustration, you'll never see it lose any quality at all. That makes Illustrator great for logo design and illustration work, because no matter how big or small you scale your artwork, it's always going to be super sharp. So you can take your logo and throw it onto a billboard and it'll be fine. And you can shrink it down to the size of a pea and it'll still be fine. You won't lose any quality at all. So if you're looking to make logos or illustrations, use Adobe Illustrator. Now, the downfall is that Adobe Illustrator doesn't really do well with textures because it doesn't have all that data that those hundreds or thousands of pixels do for color information. So it gets trickier when trying to make your illustrations complex with lots of textures. But it doesn't mean you can't add a little bit of texture to your designs with this little hack that I found out in Adobe Illustrator. Check out that video above, and I hope that this video taught you something new about Photoshop and Illustrator and when to know when to use each one. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.